So if you see oil prices yesterday at about $74 a barrel, wake up to Tuesday, the second trading day of the week, the 17th of July, and you're seeing Brent crude at around $71 a barrel. Prices have since moved lower as everyone continues to consider what to do between Saudi Arabia and the US. But again, we have quite a few other issues to look at as we read the tea leaves. Let's bring Adim Okwesa, who is one of the research analysts at Financial Derivatives Company, to read the tea leaves for us. Where are we with what is making the news? Good morning. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
One good news we might get to a little bit to later in this discuss is this using palm oil for biodiesel. For electricity. I'm interested in that. The NNPC says they're working with Cross River State government. That looks like some good news to me, and we could use a lot of those wastes that we throw away to generate electricity. Maybe we should just do that more quickly than looking for oil in Lake Chad. That's just my own thought. So let's just keep it there. Good morning. Good to have you. Take us through what's burning economically
on
the commodities front.
Well, I think we have a mixed bag of events this morning. I think the main issue is the price of oil is down to $71 this morning. It's down 0.56%, but I think that just masks the real issue. The last time oil was at $71 per barrel was in April, 3 months ago. So that is quite significant. So just as recent as the first week of July, was flirting with $78, $79.
Flirting with 80.
Exactly.
When I saw 78, I went ahead of myself and I was trying to jubilate that we have another 80 around the corner. Suddenly, the whole thing went down.
Okay, so that represents about a 12% decline. So that is quite significant. I think we have a combination of factors that is putting oil at the defensive right now. We have the IMF just came out yesterday and issued a warning about global growth. It said that the global economy is really slowing. We have seen tepid figures from Japan, the EU, UK,
China,
and so on and so forth. So, and we have also this cloud of trade frictions with China that is hanging over. And if it escalates further, it will tip the global economy to the negative.
The warnings are coming almost on a daily basis.
Exactly, yes.
You find key market folks talking on international news channels that there will be serious consequences for the financial markets if this trade war between Washington and Beijing cross the next level. We might see a very strong heat on the market, and that got me a little bit worried while dressing up for work this morning.
Yes, indeed. And also, another factor is geopolitics. Geopolitics was pretty much at the forefront yesterday with regards to this Trump-Putin summit in Helsinki, Finland yesterday. I think the markets were expecting a headline from the meeting, let's say, because, you know, Trump has been very prolific on Twitter, attacking OPEC for keeping prices artificially high. So we expected...
He has attacked almost virtually everyone. Let's just move on.
So we expected, let's say, a headline from the meeting, like, let's say, Russia and the US have agreed to collude, Russia will boost prices. But instead, we got an announcement saying that the US would likely release oil from its reserves. But that is not imminent because that would require congressional approval. So, but that announcement alone sent
All prices tumbling, yes.
Yes, exactly. And we also have, like you said earlier in the program, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, they are in line with their agreements on June 23rd. They are beginning to raise production gradually. So that is a combination of these factors that are keeping oil prices depressed. But some respite is that Shell has lifted the force majeure on Nigeria's Bonilla crude.
Yes.
So that should provide a counterbalancing effect on
we were about 1.56 or so million barrels per day in June.
Yes.
That was the report. So with this lifting of force majeure, we're likely seeing...
about 1.75, 1.8 million barrels per day.
Okay, so we could bring about 200,000 extra back on stream.
Yes, indeed. So that is good news today. But I think this is happening at the same time when we're seeing FPI outflows from stock markets. It's been well documented. It's actually just doom and gloom for emerging markets around the world, from Turkey to Argentina to Israel, in light of the US going to increase interest rates at least 2 more times this year, and also this friction between the US and China. That is really hurting emerging markets. So Nigeria is not isolated from that. So that's quite significant. The byproduct from that is that there will be pressure on our stock market. I mean, I can count the number of times on my finger, on my hands, the stock market has gained in the past 30 days. So there's real pressure on the stock market, and also pressure on our currency too. There's a lot of pressure on our currency.
There's a bit of a pressure on our currency. Yes, a bit of pressure is coming in there. But again, if you look at this outflow, and well, let's move it a little bit to the power sector and see this on-grid power that you folks put there. It's one of the items we have on the news. What's happening to power outputs below 4,000 despite heavy rainfall? On-grid power down almost 4%.
Yes, power has been very volatile. I mean, it's gained quite a bit from this time 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It's up to 3,759 megawatts per hour. But we're still seeing water constraints, grid constraints, gas constraints really affecting total output. So, but the good news is that it's up today, and hopefully to increase further.
But if we look at the next page, which is July 14th average power output, which will be coming up very shortly on screen. If you look at the total gas constraints, that's quite massive. If we have almost 2,000 megawatts constrained due to gas, while the grid constraint is almost the same, and water constraint is just 240 megawatts per hour. You put all of that together, and we are seriously, our electricity is underwater.
Yes, and that is quite unusual for this time of the year. Usually, water reserves are quite high.
The rainfall hasn't been really heavy this year so far. A bit of a delayed rainfall, I guess. I'm not the weatherman. Wish I know what more would do.
But it has picked up in the past few days, few weeks. So one would expect that at least the hydro power stations would be well active at this point of the year. But that is not the case.
Okay. So let's get the oil palm story into this very quickly before we talk about lead production, which is one other story. What's your take if we can use palm oil derivatives like the husks, whatever it is, to generate biofuel?
That is very welcome if you can actually get that running. We're seeing, this reminds me of Ivory Coast story where they're using byproducts from their cocoa shells to produce biomass energy. If we can replicate that with palm oil, that would be very good news. That would provide an alternative source of power, so we can stop relying on the national grid, and that
But yes, the whole of Cross River State alone, between Cross River, Akwa Ibom, and all that corridor, all the way to Ondo State, rich in palm oil. Yes, in palm trees, whatever, and all that southern corridor, all the way down up to Bayelsa, and all the way up to, you get a lot of things there. And Ebonyi State. I don't just get it where we can't get a biofuel from oil palm, where if we can't get crude oil, we can get oil palm. We should. But let's talk about lead a little bit. This was one very annoying part of our own mining sector issue. The last time with one of your team members who talked about tin, I guess that was last week or the previous week, the week before that, they were talking about lead also being produced majorly in Plateau State, but we can't really get enough out of that. Bring us up to speed, and I want to see that on the screen.
Yes, lead production, it amounts to produce about a very meager amount, worth about $500,000 a quarter. We're not really invested in mining, in extracting minerals from that part of the region. I think there's underinvestment in that area, significant underinvestment in that area. But
what I'm looking at on the screen is very heartbreaking. This is a $26 billion industry.
Yes, indeed. And we produce just about $500,000 of that per quarter. So
we're not even on the radar.
We're a very marginal player in that market. So, but the truth is that we are focusing more on agriculture as an avenue to diversify our export base rather than minerals. Minerals is one avenue that we should begin to look at. I remember the Minister of Mines last year went on a campaign to really promote the potential, the attractiveness of Nigeria's potential.
This is just about potential. But let's flip that over from our production team. I'll go to the second page about lead production in Nigeria, which can use for batteries and all that. And this is where the figures begin to come home to everyone who gets me head scratching all the time. Look at it. We earned just about 766 million naira
Mm.
in Q1 from lead exports.
Yes,
That's a drop in the ocean.
Exactly. So hopefully in the years to come, more investment will be put in that industry, and we can be able to extract more from that industry and gain more.
Well, when you look at the three major states where we have production here in Plateau and Gombe State and Ebonyi. Ebonyi is relatively quiet. Well, if you look at Plateau and Gombe, folks perhaps they're getting a bit scared about going in there and doing business.
Exactly. In light, thousands of farmers have been displaced in light of this crisis, this herdsman farmers crisis.
Those deadly attacks. But again, the last point there is also very important about poisoning. Lead is very, very dangerous. And if I took what the last conversation the Vice President had with the folks from around Africa, around the world, who held a meeting in Abuja, I guess about 3 weeks ago, about how lead poisoning has crippled hundreds in some part of Niger State and Zamfara State because they were digging for gold. Gold also has some measure of lead. Then you go to do lead production, extraction directly. Then if you're not doing it on a commercial basis, if you're doing it as artisanal,
yes,
then you're risking deaths of those who work there, whether they are men, women, and children, sometimes very wrongfully involved in such deadly manual extraction of lead from under the ground.
Yes, indeed. I think it's a very big risk for miners. And I think that most mining is done by artisanal miners rather than the more formal mining.
Yeah, companies who have all the equipment.
Exactly. So they are more at risk. So I think it's good news that we promote awareness about the risks of mining. There's a very
using
ardent risk of
and cutlasses to dig for it.
There's a very present risk which has serious health consequences. So I think we should continue to promote awareness of this kind of risks.
Yes. Yeah, I think the Ministry of Mines and whatever resources should get that in the front face of those people, in particular around those areas of the country where you find tin, gold, lead, whatever, all the way from Plateau, Jos, whatever area, all the way to the north. So, okay, but let's talk about this very terrible weather in Germany on one hand and France on the other hand, impacting wheat prices. That's my bread, my wheat that is getting threatened as we still import wheat anyway.
Yes, indeed. Right now, the story there is that there's a heat wave in Northern Europe, Germany, France, Poland, Russia, apart from France, which are major producers of wheat. In France, there's massive flooding, which is affecting and destroying crops. In Germany, temperatures have exceeded about 30 degrees Celsius, which is unusual for this time of the year, and that is damaging crops. And analysts are not, this harvest is not looking promising for the market. So that is really having a positive impact on prices. Prices are at a 2 to 3 month high right now. And when wheat prices go up, unfortunately, it is bad for Nigeria because Nigeria is a major importer of wheat. We import about 450 million metric tons of wheat every year, which comes about $3.6 million per year. So when the global price of wheat goes up, it affects our import bill negatively.
Yes, I'm not sure I like this. Because if you look at wheat prices now increasing about 1.35% to $4.83 cents per bushel if you're trading that on the Chicago Board Options Exchange, if you're looking at the futures there, and I'm trying to do that, that's not really good news for me because it begins to come back to me one way or the other. I've got to spend FX to bring in the flour, and by the time it gets to the guys at the bakeries,
all they do is that they add their own costs to compensate for increased operational expenses. So we're already seeing that in the domestic market. The price of flour is a bit high. It's a bit higher this morning, about 11,000 per bag. So hopefully that wouldn't. This is short term. This heat wave is really short term.
We'll get over.
In the next 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully, temperatures would have cooled down and harvests will begin to pick up. So,
do we still have a bit of production of wheat locally?
We do, but it's a very marginal production, marginal output. So,
that wheat is coming from that part of the country. We all know where that is.
Yes, the north, exactly. Yeah. The north.
Let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much. Quite enough to chew, to read in the world of commodities. Adim Okwesa, one of the great team at Financial Derivatives Company. Let's come back and what are you learning for leading in today's fast-moving global business space. We have those who understand where the world is going, and you can benefit from their insight when it comes to learning for leading.